For 5 years, my granddaughter was silenced. What the doctor revealed changed everything forever. Teresa's heart raced as she navigated the school hallways, her warm eyes scanning the buzzing cafeteria where Lily, her precious granddaughter, sat alone at a corner table. The laughter of other children filled the air, an unsettling symphony that seemed to echo her fears. Fears of neglect and misunderstanding. For 5 long years, Teresa had watched her bright, imaginative Lily grow quieter, retreating further into silence, an island amidst a sea of chatter. Was it really just a phase, as the teachers suggested? Or something more sinister that they refused to see? The thought gnawed at Teresa, twisting in her stomach like a thorny vine. Every school day she'd planted herself nearby, hoping beyond hope to catch a glimpse of budding friendships. Most days, she was met with glaring indifference from peers and teachers alike, faces molded in concern, but oblivious to the turmoil of emotions stirring beneath Lily's surface. The painful awareness of her granddaughter's struggles left Teresa feeling a deep sense of despair. A small flicker of flame, fighting against a whirlwind of icy doubt and pressure. Just yesterday, the principal had dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand, citing resources spread thin and questioning Lily's diagnosis. "It's just a phase," he claimed, a dismissive smile gracing his lips. "She'll grow out of it." Teresa recalled the way her heart had plummeted at that moment, each word striking like a hammer against glass. So fragile, so unyielding. She couldn't shake the sensation that the very institutions meant to protect and nurture her granddaughter were on the verge of shattering her hopes into countless pieces. As her emotions spiraled, Teresa grappled with her moral compass. Hadn't her parents raised her to believe in resilience, in advocating not just for oneself, but for family? The inherent loyalty weighed heavily on her heart, igniting a fierce determination alongside gnawing doubts. Pressing her hands against the cool table, she felt the tremors of uncertainty. What if fighting for Lily's voice were a futile act? What if it led to more despair, not only for her granddaughter, but for others like her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. An unexpected glimmer of hope arrived as news circulated about a new pediatric speech therapist recently settled in town. Could this be the turning point for Lily? The key to unlocking the silence that had ensnared her for so long? With cautious optimism, Teresa found herself seated in the therapist's office, a wave of apprehension washing over her. As the words spilled from the doctor's mouth, a revelation like a tidal wave crashed into her. Lily's silence stemmed from a rare neurological condition that had gone unnoticed for years. Relief surged, yet despair followed in its wake. Wouldn't this just complicate their fight against the system that had already failed them? As Teresa battled her crushing internal conflict, anger began to swell. With a newfound urge to rally against the institution perpetuating ignorance, she could feel the weight of the world bearing down upon her, gnawing at the sanity she clung to. Would her journey for justice strengthen her, or tear down the fragile foundation of family she held so dear? Standing at the intersection of hope and trepidation, Teresa knew she had to choose her next step carefully. With an unresolved future ahead, she felt the immense pressure of the fight looming before her, and the uncertainty of her granddaughter's voice echoed in her mind. A haunting reminder of the journey still to come. So many unanswered questions lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to be unveiled. Teresa sat in her car, the engine humming quietly under her stress-laden thoughts. Just moments before, she had left the therapist's office, and though a ray of clarity had illuminated Lily's situation, the reality of their next steps loomed ominously ahead. She couldn't shake the feeling that the implications of Lily's diagnosis were bigger than they appeared. The school system had failed them, but what did this mean for both her granddaughter and herself? Emotionally fortified yet engulfed by apprehension, she picked up her phone. The urge to share her newfound knowledge with Lily's teachers consumed her. Yet the fear of not being heard, a fear deeply rooted in past experiences, clouded her judgment. Did they even have a grasp on what it meant to support a child like Lily? Confronting the personnel who had overlooked the truth felt daunting, but she recognized that silence from her would equal further silence for Lily. Taking a deep breath, she was resolved to draft an email. She envisioned each word meticulously, wielding her anguish not as a weapon, but as a clarion call. Her fingers hovered above the keys, a competing urge to dismiss the effort clawing at her resolve. This was it. This was her moment to advocate for her granddaughter. She began typing, her heart pounding as the fear of rejection faded into a fervor for change. "Dear Ms. Johnson," she wrote, articulating the nuanced nature of Lily's condition as if it were a road map leading to understanding. The email flowed out of her, a dance between frustration and hope that ultimately transcended her own turmoil. After hitting send, a wave of vulnerability washed over her. She closed her eyes, grappling with managing a potential fallout. Would they respond with collaboration or indifference? Days passed like molasses. Teresa's phone remained eerily silent. The absence of a reply left a hollow ache deep in her chest. Was any of her effort truly worth it? With each tick of the clock, frustration threatened to bubble over like a pot left too long on the stove. Finally, just as doubts began to wrap themselves around her head, a reply arrived. Heart racing, she opened the email. Ms. Johnson was apologetic and suggested a meeting to discuss how the school could provide better support for Lily. Like a fire igniting in the depth of her heart, hope flickered anew. Perhaps there was a way forward, a thread of possibility weaving through her despair. Yet, beneath this hope, another undercurrent pulsed. A feeling of dread about the meeting itself. What if her passion for Lily's well-being came off as too demanding? What if they dismissed her concerns again? The question snowballed, morphing into an overwhelming tension that clutched at her gut. But as a new resolve set in, she recognized that preparing for this meeting was vital. She could not allow another dismissal or insensitivity. Teresa sought out resources, immersing herself in literature about child psychology and special education needs. Each piece of knowledge fortified her resolve, unveiling layers of her own capabilities she hadn't recognized before. She could become an advocate, not just for Lily but for others like her as well. Her thoughts flicked back to the promise she'd made. To Lily. To herself. As the day of the meeting approached, anticipation transformed into a fierce determination. She would communicate the fears and frustrations, weaving Lily's voice into the fabric of the discussion, creating a space for acknowledgement and change. It was time, Teresa realized, to confront her fears head-on. With each passing moment, her heart echoed a new mantra. Advocating for Lily meant not just breaking the silence around her granddaughter's condition, but also amplifying others' voices in the process. She wasn't merely fighting for Lily anymore. She was redefining the narrative within an entrenched system that had perpetuated misunderstanding. But would that resolve stand the test of confrontation? Would the meeting lead to a new dawn for Lily? Or would it merely expose the vast chasm of ignorance still looming within the walls of the very institution designed to uplift her? The clock ticked closer to their pivotal encounter, and all she could do was hope she was ready to take the stand her granddaughter so desperately needed. The moment of truth was fast approaching, lingering just beyond the horizon. The day of the meeting loomed large in Teresa's mind, an ever-present weight that settled in her chest, tightening with every thoughtful reflection. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting shadows across her living room, where she ignited her passion with books, articles, and countless hours of research. What had once felt insurmountable was gradually transforming into an arsenal of knowledge at her disposal. For the first time in decades, she felt like an architect, not merely a bystander, reshaping the dialogue around her granddaughter's needs. She meticulously assembled notes, bullet points of concerns, strategies, and suggestions. As she wrote, she practiced her responses, pacing the confined space of her mind like a boxer before a match. Each repetition of her argument strengthened her resolve. She envisioned how her words would flow in the meeting until they felt less like a fight and more like a dialogue. A flash of uncertainty still crept in. What if they didn't see Lily's unique gifts? What if the meeting spiraled into defensiveness? But with each negative thought emerged a counterbalancing force of determination. She owed it to Lily to be prepared. She forced herself to focus on not just the obstacles, but the opportunities. Real chances to foster understanding and support. The morning arrived and she dressed with purpose, donning a simple but assertive outfit that reflected her transforming self-image. With each clasp of her necklace and every fixing of her blouse, she felt layers of anxiety peel away. She practiced smiling before the mirror, aiming for confidence. Here she was, ready to present not just a plea but a path forward. As she drove to the school, the familiar route felt different, charged with possibility. She could swear the trees lining the street were leaning in, eager to hear her thoughts. But then a familiar, creeping doubt clawed at the edges of her optimism. What if they dismissed her? What if everything she'd prepared fell on deaf ears? Pulling into the school parking lot, her heart raced. A wave of nostalgia swept over her. A mix of pride and regret as she recalled the countless times she'd fought for others, but felt autonomous in her fears. Would this moment be any different? As she stepped out of the car, the chill of the air mirrored the brisk edge of anxiety within her. The school door swung open, revealing a variety of teachers and staff hustling about, each step deeper into their fortress of routine. Teresa felt as if she were walking into an arena. Yet every familiar face dulled her courage a little more. She spotted Miss Johnson through the windows of the conference room, flipping through a folder. The sight urged Teresa's feet to move, to reclaim her strength. As she entered the room, she was greeted by Miss Johnson's welcoming smile and two other educators who appeared equally warm. Calm yet suffused with adrenaline, Teresa took a seat, pulling her notes closer, teasing out her thoughts on the surface of her attention. Those flashing doubts flickered like flames, but she inhaled deeply, pushing them down. "Thank you for meeting with me," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I wanted to discuss some ways the school can provide support for Lily." Those words seemed to hang in the air, more commanding than she anticipated. The moment of confrontation had arrived, and her heart raced in recognition. This was no longer just about her granddaughter. It was about confronting an ingrained philosophy of education that had overlooked children like Lily for far too long. With each point she articulated, her confidence blossomed. The teachers listened, exchanged glances, and took notes. They nodded, demonstrating understanding and engagement instead of resistance. For the first time, Teresa felt the power of her voice resonating, echoing in the room, creating ripples of acknowledgement. But what awaited her next? As she knew change remained an uphill battle fueled by momentum, she couldn't help but sense the lingering challenge ahead. Would the true depth of Lily's experience really be understood? The meeting would conclude, but was it just the first step towards a greater transformation? Teresa steeled herself, ready for whatever came next. The inkling of a new battle brewed just as the meeting was about to conclude. As the meeting drew to a close, Teresa felt the room shift. Conversations that had seemed monumental just moments earlier dwindled into a hum of polite nods and offers to follow up. She had expected a robust dialogue but was left with a single, gnawing query. Had she truly made an impact? Or was it just an illusion crafted from her own hope? Ms. Johnson's thanks, though genuine, echoed hollowly against the refrain in her mind. Was this merely a watershed moment, or just a drop in an endless ocean? Each teacher promised to take her suggestions to the broader team, which sounded like a clear path forward. Yet self-doubt crept in like a shadow. What if their good intentions faded in the three-ring circus of daily education? She couldn't help but fear that they would tuck her pleas beneath the weight of their routines, never to resurface. "Can I walk you out?" Miss Johnson's voice cut through the haze. Teresa nodded, grateful for the chance to decompress. As they ambled down the winding school hallway, adorned with children's artwork and busy educators, Teresa confronted the impulse to press for more. She needed clarity. "Do you really think they'll listen? You know, put Lily's needs first?" Ms. Johnson regarded her thoughtfully. "I believe they will. Change is slow, but it starts with conversations like ours. You've planted a seed, Teresa." A quiver of gratitude swelled in Teresa's chest, laced with trepidation. She had planted seeds before, but would they take root this time? As she stepped into the sunlight, a profound urge to channel this momentum surged through her veins. She realized this wasn't merely about advocating for Lily. It was about standing as a voice for many overlooked children. She had a narrative that needed to be expanded, and she would be the author of that expansion. The drive home felt electric. Instead of homeward-bound dreariness, she envisioned a project, a supportive community group that encompassed not just Lily's situation, but also those of other children experiencing the same struggles. Wouldn't it be a beacon of change? A conduit of communication between parents and educators? Yet, the ambitious idea clouded her focus, daring her to step further into uncharted territory. Organizing meetings, forging connections with parents, and engaging with educational professionals felt both exhilarating and daunting. Could she truly balance such an endeavor alongside her work and personal commitments? Teresa fought the encroaching waves of doubt, reminding herself that momentum could easily dissipate if left unchecked. If she didn't nurture this desire now, she feared it would slip away like grains of sand through her fingers. She parked in her driveway, her mind racing with possibilities. What first step would ground her ambition? A follow-up meeting? Casual coffee with other parents? She reached for her phone, fingers trembling over the screen, but then hesitated. Thoughts of not just immediate action, but strategic engagement flooded her mind. This wasn't just about her. It was about building a movement, albeit small at first. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, breaking her focus. She hastened to answer, heart stirring with a sudden sense of urgency. On the porch stood Lily, holding a stack of drawings that burst with color and life. "Grandma, look, I made these for you." Those innocent eyes, framed by uncontainable energy, filled Teresa with warmth, but also aroused a wave of questions. What did her granddaughter truly know about her struggles? Did she feel the weight of the silence that had once been imposed upon her? As she knelt to embrace Lily, determination surged back within her. She could help her granddaughter, and in doing so, perhaps kindle the journey for others like Lily. But beneath the joy, an unsettling thought loomed. What if her efforts at change failed? What if she couldn't rally the support needed to sustain momentum? Amid her embrace, she pulled back slightly, looking into those bright, unsuspecting eyes. The spark of her ambition ignited anew. Change was imminent, but she knew her next move had to be decisive and thoughtful. Would the coming days see her become a true advocate, or merely a restless dreamer? In that moment, she felt the tension of looming decisions choke the air. Whatever she chose next would not just impact Lily. It would define her emerging path. What lay ahead would test not only her resolve, but the very essence of her newfound identity as a champion for her granddaughter. The challenge ahead weighed heavily, yet she couldn't ignore the call to action. The journey had only just begun, But with each heartbeat, Teresa sensed the exhilarating possibility of transformation. The impact of her story was yet to unfold. Would she seize the momentum, or let it drift into silence once more? Teresa inhaled the familiar scent of lilies blooming in her garden, using it as an anchor against the tide of uncertainty that threatened to engulf her. The colors of Lily's drawings danced in her mind like a kaleidoscope of hope, reigniting a flicker of determination within her. She could almost hear the soft voices of doubt whispering that this was just a whimsical dream. Yet the vibrant strokes on paper urged her to believe otherwise. "Okay," Teresa muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's make this happen." She felt a surge of clarity crystallize her thoughts. If she was going to advocate for Lily, she needed a plan. She grabbed a pad of paper and a pen and began jotting down her ideas, heart racing with each word that filled the page. She realized that starting with a simple parent meeting would keep things manageable, allowing her to gauge interest and gather insights from those facing similar challenges. What if they could share their stories too? Sharing those experiences could open avenues of empathy, creating a lifeline that had previously felt out of reach. Each scratch of her pen across the paper transformed her anxiety into actionable steps. Venue, time, key points to discuss. She wavered between excitement and dread as she planned. Would parents even show up? What if they were tired of fighting against a system that had repeatedly pushed them back? A new wave of doubt rolled in, colder this time. She found herself asking whether she was the right person for this. After all, advocating for children was heavy work, laced with inherent risks of failure. The memories of past attempts to rally support flashed back. The empty eyes of parents who were too drained by daily battles to consider helping one another. Yet the thought of Lily's smile strengthened her resolve. She tucked that doubt away, choosing instead to focus on the possibilities that lay ahead. With fresh energy rekindled, Teresa called her closest friends, parents she'd met through school functions and local events. Each call chipped away at the reservations lurking in her mind. One by one, their enthusiasm matched her own. "Count me in, and I'm so glad you're doing this," became a soothing mantra that assured her she wasn't stepping into this alone. By the end of the day, she had a committed group gathered for a meeting next week. The optimistic buzz that filled her spirit was punctured only by the lingering thought, what could go wrong? What if they couldn't create the change they so desperately wanted? With every ringing affirmation, a seed of anxiety twisted in her gut, but now it coexisted with something more powerful. Hope. Over the next few days, Teresa meticulously organized flyers and reached out to local organizations for support. But it wasn't just the structure that mattered. It was how she presented herself. She had to embody confidence, yet remain open, to listen and adapt. On the afternoon before the meeting, she stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse, rehearsing her opening remarks. The reflection staring back felt foreign, a woman poised on the brink of transformation, yet haunted by insecurities. She quizzed herself. Can you really lead these parents? Will they see you as more than just a neighbor fighting a single battle? As she gathered her notes, she captured fleeting flashes of self-reproach, realizing they stemmed from a deeper fear. The concern that perhaps she would slip back into a silhouette of doubt, failing those who entrusted their stories to her. Still, the clarity emerged. This endeavor wasn't solely about her confidence. It was about representing families like hers, whose children's voices had been stifled far too long. She sat that evening, paper strewn about her kitchen table, with a steaming mug of chamomile in her hands. As she reviewed her notes, she let the thought settle. She would be their voice, and through that, she might find her own. A sharp knock on the door brought forth another wave of anticipation as she left the kitchen, barely aware of her racing heart. It wasn't one of her friends. It was a stranger, a neighbor she seldom interacted with. "What can I help you with?" she asked, curiosity merging with caution as she opened the door. "Hi, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I heard you're organizing something for the kids at school. I'd like to help." Teresa could feel the momentum building within her. Her fight was no longer solitary. The impending meeting had sparked interest beyond her expectations. But where would this lead exactly? What began as a timid seed of an idea was blooming into something larger than her fears could contain. As she stepped outside to engage, Teresa couldn't shake off the sense that something unpredictable was about to unfold. Would she be prepared for the challenges of rallying support among parents? Or would unforeseen complications threaten to derail her newfound momentum? One thing was certain. She was about to find out. The morning of the meeting dawned with a sense of meticulous anticipation. Teresa woke early, restless excitement mingling with the shadow of her ever-present doubts. The sun seeped through her curtains, illuminating the small kitchen where she'd planned countless details over the past few days. Each cup of coffee felt like a pulse, driving her forward into the unknown. As she prepared breakfast, her mind raced through the list of things she still needed to finalize. Would the projector work to showcase Lily's drawings? How many flyers had actually made it into the right hands? The clock mocked her, ticking down the seconds until she would be standing in front of a room full of parents, each carrying their own stories of anxiety and determination. Tension hung heavily in the air when she arrived at the designated venue. Empty chairs stared back at her, and her nerves surged as she began arranging them in a semicircle. What if they all bail at the last minute? She thought, battling the creeping dread that threatened to muddle her resolve. A voice inside reminded her of those initial calls, the excitement bubbling from her friends as they committed to join her. Yet deep down, that exhilaration was buried under a fresh layer of worry. She polished her notes, going over the points she wanted to emphasize. Understanding challenges, creating a support network, and most importantly, embodying hope. As parents began trickling in, her apprehension eased slightly. She offered warm smiles, engaging in small talk with those she hadn't seen in a while. With each handshake and nod, the room sparked with a shared energy. Finally, when the last few parents sat down, Teresa took a deep breath and approached the front of the room. The hesitant glances she received weighed on her, but she clung to the thought of Lily, her radiant smile encouraging her forward. "Thank you all for being here," she began, the quiver in her voice morphing into a steadying cadence. "I know everyone here is facing unique challenges with our children, and that it can be incredibly isolating." As she spoke, she noticed subtle nods and shifting expressions around the room. This was a moment of recognition. She articulated the issues they faced collectively, tapping into those unspoken grievances that had held them all captive. Stories flowed out of her, hers, Lily's, and those of other parents she had spoken to, each layered with emotion yet tinged with purpose. When she finally reached the conclusion, an unexpected hush cloaked the room. It was as if they were processing the initial spark of a shared fight. The realization that they could support one another echoed silently. "Now," Teresa continued, "let's talk about how we can do this together. Each of us has something valuable to share. What challenges do you face? What support do you need?" A wave of vulnerability spread through the group as stories began pouring out. One mother spoke of her child's struggles with behavioral issues. Another shared concerns about the lack of resources available. Each revelation cut through the initial tension, leaving Teresa both empowered and overwhelmed. The stories were heart-wrenching, yet they illuminated a path forward. These parents were ready to advocate together, not as stragglers, but as a united front, each voice crucial to the cause. Yet, amid the genuine connection and empathy building in the room, Teresa sensed a mounting complexity. The deeper they dug into shared experiences, the more she realized. Some parents were more experienced in fighting the system than she was, their knowledge and frustration sharper than hers. Would they see her as a leader, or merely a novice with a loud voice? She felt their collective gaze evaluating her as she guided the conversation. Would they empower her, or question whether she could handle the responsibility? The disclosure of their stories proceeded with a palpable energy that sent her mind racing. Each story constructed a web of potential alliances, but it also spun strands of anxiety that tangled around her ambitions. In the midst of chaos, a thought crystallized. Teresa needed more than a voice. She needed strategy and partnership if she was to face the challenges ahead. How could she foster this newfound unity into something sustainable and powerful? As she closed the meeting, her heart raced, knowing that challenges awaited her beyond merely gathering support. The stakes were rising, and her vision had to evolve quickly. Just then, a figure stepped forward. One of the fathers, whose insight she had respected, a critique formed on his lips. "What you're proposing isn't an easy path," he said, intensity flashing in his eyes. "Are you sure you're ready for what comes next?" With each word, Teresa felt the tension coiling tighter around her chest. Now, with the meeting concluded, the real test was yet to come. How would she respond to his unyielding challenge? Would she rise to meet the new expectations, or allow the weight of uncertainty to drag her down? The moment of truth loomed closer, and Teresa knew she had some pivotal decisions to make to transform intention into impact. Teresa stared at the father, uncertainty battling against her innate urge to confront the challenge he posed. His question hung in the air, a heavy weight that threatened to crush her resolve. She recognized the sincerity in his gaze. This wasn't mere skepticism, but a demand for authenticity. "Am I ready?" The words echoed within her, mixing with the sounds of parents packing up their things. Each rustle served as a reminder of her insecurities. How could she muster confidence when self-doubt still clung tightly to her? She forced a smile, desperate to project assurance despite the fluttering in her chest. "I believe we can create something meaningful together," she replied, infusing her voice with the steadiness she longed to embody. As she spoke, her mind raced with possibilities. Could she really foster the kind of influential network that could enact real change? The hesitation in his eyes mirrored her own fears, evoking a question that burned deeply within. What did leadership require of her? The father's presence shifted her focus. His experience, his intensity. It all reflected an inherent knowledge of what they could confront together. But how would she bridge the gap between her ambition and his expectations? Perhaps this was more than a test of her readiness. It was an opportunity to engage, to learn from him while also asserting her own vision. "Would you be willing to talk about your experiences? Share your strategies?" she asked, surprising herself with the boldness of her inquiry. He paused, the corners of his mouth turning up ever so slightly. "We can strategize, but make no mistake. It won't be easy. The system is designed to keep us quiet." She met his gaze, something fierce igniting within her. "Then let's make some noise," she declared. And in that moment she discovered a flicker of something she hadn't acknowledged before, an emerging tenacity that shimmered vivid against her doubts. Over the next few days, Teresa immersed herself into developing an actionable plan. She reached out to various parents who'd attended the meeting, gathering insights, asking them not just about their struggles, but about possible solutions they had envisioned. With every conversation, she unearthed hidden talents within the group. One parent had ties to educational resources. Another had experience navigating bureaucratic channels. Slowly, she curated a more structured approach. With sticky notes proliferating on her walls, strategies clashed and merged until a cohesive blueprint emerged. By transforming individual stories into collective action points, Teresa began to feel empowered again. Each detail revealed was a step toward a sprawling vision that was both daunting and exhilarating. Yet, As she pieced it together, a gnawing anxiety lingered on the periphery of her mind, a constant reminder of her lack of formal training. What if they came to realize she was just an ordinary parent trying her best? Would the weight of responsibility crush her? Each time she sat down to refine their goals into tangible actions, the prospect of failure loomed like a shadow, threatening to envelop her newfound resolve. Determined to shake off the doubt, Teresa decided to host a follow-up meeting, an open space where everyone could contribute ideas on forging a tactical framework. When she proposed the concept, responses varied from hesitation to outright enthusiasm. Yet, the enthusiasm fueled her. Their trust ignited something visceral within her. The day of the meeting approached, and as she sat among her notes filled with outlines and objectives, the stakes felt higher than ever. Anticipating both support and dissent, she steeled herself. Moments before stepping into the room, she paused, allowing a breath of clarity to frame her intentions. The prospect of collaboration stirred not just strength, but purpose within her. Then came another thought, unfurling in her mind. What if she was fundamentally misjudging her role? Was she a leader, or merely a figurehead born from circumstances beyond her control? As uncertainty knotted in her gut, she was confronted by an urgent realization. She could no longer rely solely on the momentum created in the first meeting. As her heart raced with the gravity of the upcoming conversation, she allowed herself to ponder. What if I'm standing on the brink of not just a conversation, but an unforeseen responsibility that could change everything? And with that single question reverberating within her, Teresa stepped forward into the meeting room, ready to embrace whatever would unfold. The moment of truth was nearly upon her. She would either stand resolute in her convictions, or find herself grappling with the implications of her decisions. What lay ahead was unknown, but one thing was certain. Challenges would multiply, and her resolve would be tested in ways she never anticipated. Would she ultimately step into the leadership role she craved, or retreat under the weight of her own self-doubt? The answers were looming just beyond her reach. Teresa took a deep breath as she entered the meeting room, the air thick with tension and anticipation. A circle of familiar faces turned towards her, some reflecting nervous energy, while others bore expressions of expectation. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. She had envisaged this moment countless times in her mind, the day when she would finally bring the disparate voices of parents together to forge a unified path forward. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady, but her heart racing. Teresa fought to mask the tremor that threatened to betray her. "I want to open our discussion with the experiences we've shared. Each of us has unique insights, and if we build on that, we can begin to outline a tactical approach to tackle the issues at hand." The meeting commenced with a flurry of ideas. Teresa watched as parents shared their stories, their frustration transforming into fervor. With each contribution, however, a subtle sense of inadequacy shadowed her. Their ideas shimmered with clarity, while she grappled with the tangles of her own thoughts, wondering if hers would hold equal weight. "That's a great point," she interjected during a particularly passionate speech about navigating the school system. "But how do we ensure that our voices are heard? What tangible steps can we take?" The words flowed more effortlessly than she'd anticipated, bolstered by the group's energy. Yet a lingering fear loomed. What if her contributions faltered under scrutiny? A hand shot up from the back, and Teresa recognized one of the more outspoken parents who had often challenged her. "You keep implying we need structured steps, but what if we just get shut down before we even start?" His tone was skeptical, pulling the room's focus back to her. The direct confrontation rattled her. I understand your concern, and I want to address it," she continued, trying to keep her voice from trembling. "But if we don't strategize, we risk remaining unheard. We need to approach this as a coalition that's ready to be taken seriously." Those words took root in her mind. Coalition. The realization struck her that she wasn't just rallying talk, she was nurturing a group with shared ambitions. Yet doubt prickled at her thoughts. Was she genuinely capable of leading this coalition? The father's earlier challenge echoed in her mind. "Let's take a moment to consider our strengths," she suggested, guiding the conversation. "What skills do we each bring to the table?" The room brightened as parents volunteered their backgrounds. Education, law, social work. Each revelation painted a more complex portrait of their group and underscored the fact that while she may lack formal training, she was not alone. Each fractal of expertise was a window into possibilities Teresa hadn't previously considered, reshaping her vision of collective effort. As discussions deepened, Teresa's confidence began to surge, unwinding the tension that had temporarily gripped her. She realized leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about connecting and mobilizing the resources available to them. Still, the lingering unease lingered. An idea struck her suddenly. "What if we create subgroups based on our individual strengths?" she proposed, as the room hummed with interest. "We might, for example, have a team focused on communication with educators, another on policy advocacy. This way, everyone contributes in a way that suits their skills." Applause and chatter erupted, a tangible validation of her emerging leadership. Yet as she basked in the momentary praise, a darker seed of doubt sprouted. What if these ideas were just fleeting and unenforceable? Could they truly mobilize? Or was she leading them into another cul-de-sac? That thought shadowed her exhilaration. Just as the room consensus formed, a severe dissonance emerged from the memory of the father's critical stare. He had posed a question that was more than rhetorical. "Are we ready?" The meeting dawned upon her as both an achievement and a starting point. She might be cultivating a coalition now, but what if the passion fizzled out before they could create real change? Tension clenched her gut as she realized her vision and perseverance needed to be substantial enough to sustain their momentum. Teresa's resolve was set against the backdrop of an impending reality, that the initial synergy they had built could unravel if she faltered. "We will plan a follow-up session soon," she assured the room, grounding her voice with certainty. "But let me ask you this. What are we willing to sacrifice to ensure our goals are realized?" The collective silence that followed her question resonated deeply, and as curiosity dripped into the air, Teresa braced herself. Would they rise to the challenge placed before them, or would her fear become self-fulfilling? In that moment she realized she had stepped into an uncharted territory, not just of leadership, but of self-discovery. Each moment presented either a chance to thrive or a pitfall into uncertainty. The room had begun its journey together, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that the true test of leadership was brewing just beyond their immediate plans. What sacrifices were they ready to make, and what hurdles lay ahead that might threaten their resolve? The answers awaited, tantalizingly close yet dangerously elusive. Teresa staggered out of the meeting, the murmurs of anticipation still echoing in her ears. Each step felt weighted, burdened not by physical exertion, but by the looming uncertainty of her commitments. She had ignited a flicker of hope among parents, but doubt crept in like a thief in the night. What if she failed to deliver? What if enthusiasm waned before they achieved anything tangible? As she navigated the hallway, the mixed thrill of their shared fervor felt overshadowed by her own internal battle. A flash of doubt flared. She had proposed subgroups with a confidence she didn't fully feel, and the apprehensive stares of those parents haunted her. Could she carry them forward? Her heart raced, the fear of inadequacy tightening its grip. Arriving at her car, she paused, staring at her reflection in the window. The woman behind the glass was familiar yet foreign. Was that truly her, sitting in the driver's seat of a burgeoning leader? She had always been the dependable one, the behind-the-scenes type, but today she was thrust into the spotlight. Teresa clenched her fists, determination warring with trepidation. Amidst her swirling thoughts, one question rose to the forefront. What was she willing to sacrifice? The echo lingered, forcing her to realize that her growth hinged not merely on public speaking or engaging parents, but on something deeper: her willingness to confront her fears head-on. With a newfound purpose, Teresa clicked her seatbelt and drove toward the coffee shop where she often met her small circle of confidants. As the familiar shop came into view, she felt a pulse of excitement ride over her anxiety. Here, she could flesh out those ideas, rally support, and solicit advice. These were people who understood her, who had witnessed her transformation into this unexpected leader. Once settled at a corner table, she ordered coffee and pulled out her notebook, flipping to the pages filled with frantic notes from the meeting. It was a jumble of ideas, yet within chaos lay a potential roadmap. Each subgroup could function as a pillar, each parent contributing uniquely to the cause. They needed defined objectives, clear responsibilities, ways to not only voice their concerns, but to act upon them. In the middle of jotting down thoughts, her friend Michelle walked in, her face lighting up as she spotted Teresa. "Hey, superstar, you look like you've got a lot on your mind." "Yes, and I do," Teresa admitted, her voice a mix of frustration and excitement. She shared the events of the meeting, the energy, the ideas, and her lingering sense of inadequacy. Michelle listened intently, then leaned forward. "You need to own this, Teresa. They're following you. You can't bow out now. You must confront the skeptics, even if it's uncomfortable. You need to create a vision so compelling that nothing can undermine it." The challenge struck her like a bolt of lightning. Could she confront that father again? The idea of a face-off stung. She preferred camaraderie through dialogue rather than confrontation. Yet Michelle's words lingered, gently nudging her deeper into self-reflection. Perhaps it was time to break free from her self-imposed constraints, to shift from a passive supporter to an active force. Before she left, Teresa's mind mapped out a plan. She would meet with that father again, not in opposition, but to uncover his concerns. Understanding his lingering resistance could be a critical pivot for her leadership journey. She pictured their conversation, an opportunity for growth not solely for her coalition, but herself as well. With fresh coffee cooling nearby, she left the shop with a mission, ready to face not just what lay ahead, but her own fears. She was reshaping her narrative, not as a mere spectator, but as a participant in her own evolution. Yet deep down, an unsettling question remained. Would she manage to galvanize a movement, or would those stirring moments dissipate into echoes of what if? The path to answers unfurled, waiting for her to take the next bold step. And as she pushed through the door, sliding into her car, Teresa steeled herself for the real confrontation that awaited her. There was no time to ponder the what-ifs. Instead, she needed clarity, not just for her alliance, but for herself. The moment had arrived and the stakes were higher than ever. What would happen when she faced not just doubt from others, but the fear within? The day had finally come. Teresa stood outside the coffee shop, the familiar scent of roasted beans wafting through the air. But today it felt different. Today she was not just attending a meeting. She was taking a conscious step into the arena of her own growth and leadership. The fear that had once paralyzed her clashed with an emblazoned determination. The kind that comes from realizing her individual worth and the collective strength around her. Could she really turn her vulnerability into a striking force for change? As she entered, her heart raced with anticipation. She spotted the father, Brian, sitting in a corner booth. His own countenance blended curiosity and apprehension, mirroring her very own. "Thanks for meeting," Teresa said, her voice steady despite the rapid fluttering in her chest. "Sure, let's see if we can get some clarity on this," he replied, setting the tone for an honest exchange. They settled into comfortable conversation, the initial tension gradually fading as they navigated their shared concerns about the school system. The words flowed with purpose, and Teresa articulated her vision for their gathering of parents. We need to transform our emotional energy into a concrete action plan, a coalition of equals who amplify one another's strengths. Each sentence radiated an uncompromising hope that both terrified and exhilarated her. Brian listened, nodding occasionally, but Teresa could sense the lingering skepticism in his demeanor. That sounds great, but can we really achieve something against such an imposing system? They've had years to entrench themselves. It was a valid question, one that made her pause momentarily. But instead of retracting, she leaned in. Exactly. They've gotten complacent. But what if we present ourselves as an undeniable force of determination? What if we're not just voices but change makers? A spark flickered in Brian's eyes, and she seized that moment. Together, we can create a blueprint, and our coalition will hold itself accountable. We'll serve not just our children, but every child trapped in silence by misunderstanding. The conviction in her voice had transformed the space around them. Brian considered her words carefully, weighing them against the experiences he had encountered in the school system. If we're serious about this, we need to lay some groundwork to ensure our initiatives are truly effective. Teresa's heart surged. This wasn't just about her own shift in perspective. It was about harnessing collective strength. You're right, she affirmed, buoyed by the momentum of their burgeoning partnership. What if we develop coordinated outreach strategies, engage with educators on a personal level, and maintain an ongoing dialogue? That way, we're not just pushing for change, we're building relationships. As they mapped out strategies to engage the school district, Teresa's confidence stretched, transforming previously paralyzing fears into channels of empowerment. Clarity emerged from this collaborative endeavor, and when they finalized their action items, she felt the tide of self-doubt receding. She was no longer just a grandparent fighting alone. She was a force propelling the aspirations of an entire community. The coffee now cold in her cup, Teresa took stock of the transformation she'd undergone in just a few hours' time. The initial uncertainty about whether she was qualified enough to lead had dissipated into a realization. She had not only conveyed a vision, she had sparked genuine collaboration. The engagement with Brian had unveiled deeper layers of resilience she possessed. Her advocacy not just for Lily, but for every voiceless child in their community. As they concluded their conversation, Brian extended his hand. You've got a fire in you, Teresa. I believe we can make this work. Count me in. She accepted his handshake, a physical seal of their partnership, confidence blooming like the morning sun. We'll do this together, she promised, a sense of purpose washing over her. Driving home, a renewed energy thrummed through Teresa's veins. The burdens that had previously weighed her down felt transformed into aspirations. She had proven to herself that her voice held significance, sparking a movement that would amplify the needs of children like Lily. As plans solidified in her mind, Teresa recalled the words that had once haunted her. What if she couldn't uphold her commitments or deliver tangible results? That was no longer the narrative she chose to inhabit. Fear would not define her. She was grounded in the knowledge that she was a catalyst for change, capable of navigating uncertainties. Entering her home, the colorful drawings adorning the refrigerator sparkled with vibrancy. A reminder of why she fought fiercely. She bent down to Lily's eye level, radiant happiness glowing from the child who had blossomed right before her eyes. "We did it, sweetheart," Teresa exclaimed, her voice laced with triumph. "We are building something special together." In that moment, Teresa embraced the sweet synthesis of personal and collective achievement. The journey ahead would bring challenges, but she felt emboldened to face them. With sincerity mingled with elation, she recognized the reality. Her greatest achievement wasn't merely securing a brighter future for Lily. It was the profound growth she'd undergone in the process. She stood astonishingly poised, a determined advocate ready to confront whatever challenges would come her way. Reflecting on her evolution, first a concerned grandmother, now an outspoken leader of a movement, Teresa unknowingly blossomed into the very voice she once sought for others. The critical questions would soon resurface, but for now, she basked in the light of accomplishment. At last, she could proudly say she had conquered her fears and emerged into a realm of resilience, ready to embrace the complexity of leadership with grace and fierce love for her granddaughter. There was one last thing on her mind. She felt a compelling need to share her journey, to inspire others to stand strong for the ones they love. And with unwavering resolve, she began crafting a blog to document her experiences, hoping to stir the courage in others, an echo of the voice that had finally found its sound. Today had been just the beginning, and for that, she was immeasurably grateful. Now more than ever, it's essential to embrace your dreams and passions. Don't wait. Even one more second, subscribe immediately to this channel. Become part of this journey of transformation and personal overcoming stories. Leave a like now. It's more than just a click. It fuels the algorithm that helps spread these impactful stories to others like you. Comment below your reactions and theories about Teresa's incredible journey. We want to hear from you. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support and inspire those around you to discover their own capacity for greatness.